On the 2nd of March 2026, the state energy company of Qatar declared force majeure on its gas exports and quietly suspended something almost nobody was tracking. 16 days later, Iranian ballistic missiles struck the Ras Laffan industrial city on Qatar's northern coast. The oil markets panicked about gas, but inside a handful of procurement offices, at hospital networks, at chip fabs, at space agencies, the alarm was about something else entirely. One-third of the world's helium had just gone offline, overnight. And unlike oil, unlike gas, unlike almost anything else on Earth, helium has a property that makes this kind of loss uniquely unforgiving. This is the story of the only resource that, once it escapes, leaves the planet forever. And of the country that spent a century stockpiling it, then sold the stockpile 21 months before the missiles hit. Start with the strange part. Helium is the second most common element in the entire universe. Stars are made of it. And yet on Earth, it is one of the scarcest industrial materials we have, because Earth cannot hold on to it. A helium atom is so light that once it reaches the open air, it drifts upward through the atmosphere and eventually out into space. Every balloon that slips from a child's hand is a one-way shipment off the planet. You cannot make more. No factory, no reactor, no chemistry can produce helium at industrial scale. So why does the modern world bet lives on it? Because helium does something no other substance can. It becomes liquid at minus 269 degrees Celsius, 4 degrees above absolute zero, and it never freezes solid. It is the coldest liquid that exists. Every MRI machine in every hospital on Earth is built around a superconducting magnet, and that magnet only works bathed in liquid helium. Semiconductor fabs use helium to cool wafers and run the lithography machines that print advanced chips. Rockets use it to pressurize fuel tanks. No helium, no launch. Medicine, chips, and spaceflight, all resting on the one element that permanently leaks off the planet, which raises the obvious question. If helium is trapped underground in natural gas, and half the world drills natural gas, how did one small peninsula in the Persian Gulf end up controlling a third of the global supply? The answer is a filter with two layers. First, geology. Underground helium is made by radioactive decay, uranium and thorium in ancient rock, splitting atom by atom over hundreds of millions of years, with helium accumulating as the exhaust. It only survives where a perfect seal of rock traps it alongside natural gas. Most gas fields hold almost none. A rare few hold enough, above roughly a third of 1%, to be worth capturing. Second, economics. Separating helium from gas requires cryogenic plants so expensive that they only make sense bolted onto the largest gas export terminals ever built. Qatar's North Field is the largest natural gas field on Earth. The liquefaction complex that exports it, Ras Laffan, is correspondingly enormous, and its helium units captured what everyone else was venting into the sky. By the 2020s, that one industrial park supplied roughly a third of the helium used by every hospital, fab, and launch pad on the planet, a geological lottery funneled through a single set of gates. On the 2nd of March, 2026, the gates closed. To understand how the world walked into this, you have to go back to a gas well in Kansas that refused to burn. In 1903, drillers near the town of Dexter struck what they thought was a gusher. The town threw a celebration. A burning bale of hay was pushed toward the roaring well, and the flame went out. The gas would not ignite. Two chemists at the University of Kansas analyzed it and found the reason. Nearly 2% of the flow was helium, an element that, until then, had mostly been detected in the light of the sun. America, it turned out, was sitting on the largest helium deposits then known. Washington understood the strategic value almost immediately. Airships. In 1925, the United States created a federal helium reserve in the plains outside Amarillo, Texas. A porous rock dome deep underground, filled with the government's helium, guarded like a bullion vault. Export was restricted by law. The world found out what that meant in 1937. Germany's great airship, the Hindenburg, was designed for helium. America refused to sell it to the Nazi government. so the Hindenburg flew on flammable hydrogen instead. On May 6, 1937, it burned in 34 seconds over a New Jersey airfield. For half a century afterwards, helium was quietly American. A 425-mile pipeline gathered it from gas plants across Texas and Kansas into the Amarillo Dome. The Apollo program rode on it. Saturn V rockets were pressurized with reserve helium. At its peak, the reserve held roughly a decade of world consumption. Then in 1996, Congress looked at the stockpile and saw only the debt it had cost. The Helium Privatization Act ordered the whole thing sold. It took nearly 3 decades to execute. On January 25, 2024, the last of it, the dome, the pipeline, the plant, went to auction. A German industrial gas company, Messer, was the winning bidder. The United States Treasury collected $460 million. The strategic reserve era was over. 21 months later, the missiles hit Ras Laffan. It is not as if there were no warnings. There were 2. Recent, loud. Warning 1, June 2017. Saudi Arabia and its allies imposed a sudden blockade on Qatar. Helium from Ras Laffan normally left overland, through Saudi territory, to a port in the Emirates. Within 8 days, Qatar's helium plants shut down completely. 30% of world supply, gone for 2 weeks over a diplomatic dispute. Laboratories postponed experiments. MRI operators watched their boil-off rates and prayed. The industry called it a wake-up call. Then the blockade eased, a new route opened through Oman, and the world went back to sleep. Within 18 months, there was a global helium shortage anyway. The third in a generation. Suppliers put customers on ration cards. Universities shut down instruments mid-experiment. Even that was not enough to put a strategic reserve back on anyone's agenda. Warning 2, 2021. Russia was building the one facility on Earth big enough to rival Qatar, the Amur gas plant near the Chinese border. Its helium unit caught fire in October, then an explosion in January. Then came the invasion of Ukraine and the sanctions. The great Qatari alternative never arrived at scale. So by early 2026, the structure of the market was this: 1/3 of world helium from a single industrial city inside missile range of Iran. No strategic reserve anywhere in the West, and a substitute supplier locked behind sanctions. On the 18th of March at Ras Laffan, the theoretical risk became a crater in a gas train. The first industry to feel it was the one where helium is measured in heartbeats. An MRI magnet must stay cold continuously. If its liquid helium runs low, the magnet quenches, a violent, expensive failure that can put a scanner out of service for months. There are tens of thousands of these machines in the world, and a typical older unit quietly boils away helium every single day it operates. They are not optional equipment. They are how modern medicine finds tumors, strokes, and torn hearts. Within weeks of the strike, distributors in the United States and Europe moved to allocation. Hospitals first, surcharges for everyone, and quiet warnings that older, thirstier scanners might have to be shut down entirely. Chip makers, the second casualty, went back to a playbook they had learned the hard way. In the neon crisis of 2022. Inventories, recyclers, long-term contracts at whatever price. Spot helium prices roughly doubled within weeks. And this time, there is no quick repair. Qatar Energy's own chief executive put the precondition bluntly: production restarts when the hostilities stop. The damage assessments that followed were worse: 3 to 5 years to rebuild the wrecked trains. Full Qatari helium output is not expected back before 2029. One restart attempt this spring ended in an explosion. The gap is being scraped together from everywhere at once. American gas fields, Algeria, new projects racing forward in Tanzania and Canada. Recycling systems bolted onto every MRI suite that can afford one. It will not be enough. Analysts expect the market to stay structurally short until the end of the decade. Step back, and you can see the pattern this series keeps finding. In 2022, it was neon, half the world's supply from 2 Ukrainian steelworks exposed by a war. In 2024, it was ultra-pure quartz, 9/10 of the world from one Appalachian town, exposed by a hurricane. Now it is helium, A third of the world from one industrial park in the Gulf, exposed by a missile barrage. 3 invisible materials. 3 byproducts nobody audited. 3 shocks in 4 years. But helium is the harshest version of the lesson. Neon production could be rebuilt elsewhere. Quartz came back in weeks. Helium is different because helium is the only resource with an expiry condition written into physics. Every liter lost, vented, leaked, floated away on a party balloon, is off the planet for good. The universe is full of it. Earth's allowance is finite, and we spent a century treating it as a party trick. The United States once held 10 years of world supply in a rock dome in Texas and sold it to balance a ledger. Somewhere in the next decade, a hospital scheduler, a fab manager, or a launch director is going to discover exactly what that decision cost. The gas that would not burn turned out to be the one we could least afford to lose. This is the third time in 4 years the world's most advanced industries were stopped by a material almost nobody had heard of. The other 2 stories, the neon and the quartz, are on screen now. If these are the stories you came here for, subscribe. More files are on the way.